Bass have become the second most desired game fish in the United States. Anglers seek the black bass species, which includes largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, and spotted bass. While they are all called bass, they are actually members of the sunfish family. Specialized equipment has been developed to catch bass, from bass boats to reels, rods, lures, and fish finding equipment. Bass are found in streams, creeks, rivers, ponds, reservoirs, and lakes. Largemouth bass are generally larger and seek to escape to cover when hooked. Smallmouth bass tend to jump and fight when hooked to throw the hook. Bass are sensitive to scent, so any chemicals or smells on the fisherman's hands or when dealing with the rod, reel, or bait can inform the bass of the fisherman's existence. For example, bass can smell chemicals such as bug spray or tobacco. The scent of the chemicals is transmitted to the line, rods, reels, and bait, particularly if soft plastics are used as bait. Bass fishing as a sport was developed uniquely on its own within the United States and was not imported from Europe or other parts of the world. Bass were initially sought as a form of food from fishermen who used poles and bait to catch them. In the mid-19th century, the first artificial fly lure was developed for bass. Over time, more lures were developed. Plastic worms started being made in 1949, but became popular in the 1960s. The growth of bass fishing was advanced by the growth of the railroad. Initially, railroads ran steam engines that needed water for the steam. Ponds were created by damming creeks that intersected near the railroad tracks. It was found that bass could be transported in barrels or buckets via the railroad. So both largemouth and smallmouth bass were transported throughout the nation. In the post-war WWII era, there were the first attempts at bass management in fisheries. Farmers began to construct farm ponds containing bass. Meanwhile, due to industrialization and pollution, many of the rivers that had contained trout began to be polluted. The trout began to be killed off. Smallmouth bass began to be introduced to replace them. Then the smallmouth populations began to decline due to pollution as well. There has been a renewed interest on preserving water quality for bass, so their populations are coming back. Now there can be the opposite problem of too many bass. In some cases, a catch and release policy has led to this overpopulation, which in turn can lead to stunted fish. To determine if there are too many bass, a test can be made in the spring. If most of the bass are 4 inches and smaller, there are probably too many of them, and none of them is getting adequate food. Other indication of overpopulation and stunted growth is that the bass are skinny. Plus, if there are bluegills and they are all 1/2 pound or larger, they are too large for the bass to eat. In this situation, there are two possibilities: too many fish or not enough food. Either not enough bass were harvested, or not enough forage fish were stocked with the bass, or there are not enough forage fish to reproduce adequately to provide food for the bass to eat. If more bass are taken and the population is thinned and more forage fish are added, then there will be enough food for the remaining fish. Bass fishing is a popular sport in North America and has an interesting history. When it comes down to the eating, it is a mild-flavored fish that is a favorite. When it comes to sport, it gives anglers a challenge that they enjoy.